Hello and welcome everybody to the I3 lecture series hosted by the Masters in Digital Photography program at the School of Visual Arts. We are thrilled to have Karen Miranda-Rivadeneira as tonight's guest speaker. Karen was born in the United States but grew up on the coast of Ecuador. She is an accomplished artist whose lens-based practice stretches far beyond the traditional parameters of photography. Over the years, Karen has embraced an exploration of memory and storytelling through collaborative processes and personal narratives. Intersectional theory and earth-based healing also inform her work. Following these interests, she has collaborated with Native communities and family members alike to create photo-based projects. She has worked extensively with indigenous communities in the Ecuadorian Amazon, in the Andean Mountains, and more recently in the American Southwest. Exhibitions include the Smithsonian Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C., the Queens Museum of Art, the America Society, Miyako Yoshinaga Gallery in New York, and the Musée Quai du Branly in Paris. Karen has been nominated for the Prix Pictet, the FOAM Paul Huff Award, the Rolex Mentor and Protégé Initiative, and was shortlisted for the Hariban Award. Her first monograph, Other Stories, Historias Bravas, was published by Autograph ABP in 2018. Please help me welcome Karen Miranda-Rivadeneira to our lecture series.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jaime, for inviting me, and thank you, everyone, for being here. I just want to quickly acknowledge that I'm in Munse Lenape territory. For those of you that might not know where that is, that's 2 hours north of New York City in the New Paltz, Kerhonkson area. All right, so I want to begin with this body of work, which to me feels probably, it feels like my first body of work. Before I started doing other stories, I just want to give a little bit of a background of my practice. I studied at SVA. At SVA, I was a fine artist, so I graduated in sculpture. Then when I moved to Ecuador, I started doing photography, and I always say this, how interesting it is how we gravitate towards that we also don't know or maybe are a little bit apprehensive towards. And I remember in school that I was actually not very passionate about photography. I was like, I don't understand this medium. Everything else is more interesting. I just didn't get it. And because of that, I felt like, okay, there's something here that I need to explore. And when I moved to Ecuador after I graduated SVA, I started photographing, and one thing led to another, and I began doing working for a newspaper and doing photojournalism, which is quite incredible to even think about it in these days, where to say that it takes so long. And for me, it was a matter of like 3 months, where I was like beginning using a camera and then working at a newspaper. But it really happened. It was a strange coincidence and also luck of the time, I guess. It just needed, anyway, many things align, like all the stars just align for that to happen. And I worked in this paper for many, many months, probably almost a year. And while I was there, I started really doing a lot of projects in the Amazon. That was the area that I was very interested in. And I'm not really sharing any of that work at this moment. Just gonna tell you the story. And I went to the Danish School of Visual Arts, and then I got trained there as a photojournalist, and I came back to the States and then to Ecuador. And my first projects were in Peru, in Colombia, in Brazil, and in Ecuador, just photographing the Amazon. Coming back to New York, working, sometimes teaching at SVA, like trying to live biculturally, North and South. And as I was making these works and getting very personal, very intimate with people, and their issues and their troubles, and they were also opening up to me, I started thinking how lucky I am and also how privileged I am to be able to be witnessing so much of this life and this also chaos and all the things that could happen in the Amazon. Yet, I'm not really looking at myself. So I thought, how can I photograph others when I don't know what it is to photograph myself? I don't know what it is to be in front of the camera and ask people, stand still, don't smile, smile, do this. All of these feelings, I start feeling like, okay, I need to be there and I need to be vulnerable to myself to be able to understand what is vulnerability coming from others. So that was really like my base thought. And from then I came to New York and I started talking to my family and telling them, oh, I'm forgetting one thing. I was thinking about this thing. So as I'm thinking about how to be vulnerable in front of the camera and how to be vulnerable also with my community and what all of that means, I listened to a splendid podcast that said something about, it was a podcast on memory, and maybe all of you might know this by now. But the podcast was, or the sentence that really stood out for me was how memory is an unreliable tool, and how the more that we remember something, the more likely we are to forget. So in theory, what we remember, we change it as we remember. So the more things the more that we repeat a memory, the more we end up changing it. So with that, I thought, so what are the memories that I don't remember? And how can I access what I don't know or I don't remember to be able to portray it? So with that in mind, I came back to my family. As Jaime said, I've done a lot of work with community and my relatives. So I had this conversation with them. So pretty much what we did is some type of hypnosis, where I try to remember things that happened in my childhood. And they start coming up as snippets. And then my mother, who has an incredible memory, she would immediately remember or knew what I was talking about. So instead of, so my tool is something that I still use and I've always used, is drawing. So what I did with these images is that before they were photographed, because I was so nervous that the moment that I get in the camera, I'm going to change, I'm going to start performing, which we can talk about performance because there's definitely performance going on. But at that time, I wasn't thinking about me performing in front of the camera. I wanted to embody a version that had this memory. So what I did is that I drew. So all these images that you're about to see were all first created as drawings. And then I put them together as drawings. And then I created or orchestrated the space so we can all perform them. So this photograph is one of the first ones that I did. This is with my grandmother. Her name is Alba. And the idea here, she's from Manabí, for those of you who are from Ecuador. And and in Manabí, there's a very strong syncretism going on. So there is, and this is in a lot of places in Ecuador, rural Ecuador in general, and in many, many Latin American countries, where you have a mix of folk, indigenous traditions, Afro traditions, and then the Spanish, the Catholic tradition. So all of them start merging and converging, and they create their own new thing. So this to me is an image like that. My grandmother was very Catholic, but also had no problem cleansing my body with an egg, passing some herbs on top of me to my mother, teaching us like what to do at certain nights because that was okay or was not. So there was all this syncretism going on. So this is the first image. And they're not in order. I made about 19 of these photographs. I tried to try to be real as I can, as, for lack of a better word, with these memories. So I thought about just things that happen indoors and also happen outdoors, and everything that could just reflect a sense of identity and a sense of what is these things that, as someone that works with photography, are memories that are never really photographed, but they are important. So this is the one of my mom curing me with an evil eye, from the evil eye. So she was really good at passing the egg and determining what was going on. So I do remember having that experience a few times as I was growing. And the background has this, again, this syncretic mix between the Niño Jesus and the different African or Afro-Cuban, I would say, colors of the necklaces, santeria, and the Virgin. Something else that I wanted to say about this work is that it is, and at the time of making it, it was extremely personal. It was never meant to become public or to be even discussed with people. This was my project for myself, so I can become a better documentary photographer, and I could understand what it means to be vulnerable. So that was my feeling. And as I was creating it, and as I was exploring more in Ecuador, and also like this image that is in Queens, where my family also lived, this is my aunt teaching me how to make pan de almidón, yuca bread. And as I was making these images, I want to say one more story, if it's okay. When I did this body of work, I had applied to Enfoco. And for those of you who know Enfoco it has been an extremely important organization for many, many years in New York. And I remember that I had applied 2 times to Enfoco. And both times I received really nice notes. It's like, thank you for your submission, but this year, this and that. And I really needed the money from Enfoco to continue doing this work. And at that time, I wanted to go to Cuba and do portraits in Cuba. I had friends who lived in Cuba, and I wanted to go to Cuba. And I thought, all right, I need to do something different here because I'm not winning. This is the second year that I apply and I'm not getting anything. So I submit this body of work. And I got the award. And I was really happy, but then I thought, Enfoco is amazing, but nobody else has to see this work. This is just between Enfoco and I. That's it. This is really tiny. Nobody else has to know about it. This is it. So what happened afterwards is that through Enfoco, I ended up going to the Houston Photo Fest, and I had to show this body of work. So it became increasingly hard for me to keep talking about this work and sharing a body of work that was never meant to be for anyone else but me. And with the years, I realized how important it is to share these things, to share our vulnerability and our background, and realizing how many people from so many different places around the world emailed me and say, oh, I remember something like that with my mother in Russia, or something like that with my mother in Iran. And I'm like, incredible. It's just so, I never thought that was going to be my audience, but it ended up being. So it was very satisfying for me to see how many people could connect to recovering, rediscovering, and reenacting their memories. So long story short, after that, Autograph ABP published a book, published this work, which again, I thought, who would like to publish a book of this work? And Autograph did. And Autograph is a wonderful, wonderful publication that I admire very much. So I felt extremely, extremely privileged to be able to have this work, to publish this work with them. All right. So So this other body of work that I want to present is my long story with this woman that was a mentor, a friend, a sister, a companion. She became really, really so many things. There's very few words to. There's no words to really say how much I'm thankful of her. This woman, her name is Matilde Punalata, better known as Mama Matilde. I met her in 2009. And I think for the best of 10 years, I lived on and off with her. 2009, maybe a little bit earlier than 2009. And it started when I went back to Ecuador, and I have family in Waranda, and I went to visit my family. And then I met her from friends of other friends. And I thought, well, she's an indigenous woman. She carries knowledge, medicine woman. She works with a community. And I thought, I would like to photograph her. I would like to follow her around, take pictures of her, and that's it. And what happened later is that after years of working with her, photographing her, I became sort of her apprentice. It was a very easy, or maybe not easy, but like a fluid transition between being the photographer and being the helper. Because if I am there and she's needing help, I had to put my camera down and go and help her. So it became a really like common sense type of thing, you know? So it's like, oh, okay, I guess now I'm doing this. Now I'm in the photo with you. And I could never have the heart to say no to her. So anything that she would ask me to do, I would just do. And that's how I became her helper, her assistant, and later on a lineage carrier from her tradition. So I want to show you a little bit of this extensive journey that I had while she was alive. And we traveled to a lot of different places because she was a healer. So she had to go to a lot of different villages around the same province. So I traveled with her. And she was very adept at this ceremony of fire, of throwing fire from, it's not from the mouth, is blowing. I guess it is, if you see it in this photo like that. So yeah, so fire throwing ceremony, and that's for cleansing the spirit. And also the body. I really feel like this is one of those things that really take out fear out of yourself. Like if there's anything that you're going through and you cannot, and you don't know what's going on, you get this fire in your body, and then all of a sudden you're just like as new. And it's also, I guess, the power of fire to cleanse. I also started exploring different mediums in photography. I started doing medium format, 35 millimeter, large format, which you will see. This is her granddaughter, who also became my niece. So through this time of Piedra Redonda, as I call this body of work, I really, I photograph her. That's pretty much what I did during this time. Photograph her and then come back to New York, work, do a little bit of money, and then go back to Ecuador and photograph her. I spent a lot of time with her, months and months and months. And so it was important for me to be able to just focus and to learn and to live. So this is one of the things, you know, when I said that I became like her assistant, because virtue of being there, this is I witnessed about a dozen or more births with her. And this is the only one that I actually had a moment to photograph, because every other birth, I had my hands full of blood. So it was either a hands full of blood with a camera or the hands full of blood with the person. So it was really hard to negotiate that. And these are not communities where you have readily available alcohol, where I can go and sanitize my hands and then, so it was very much about choosing. But for this one, everything was okay-ish at this point. So I felt like, let me take a photo. And I'm really happy because, and this is just something that I wanted to share. I always think that there's going to be another chance. I'm going to be able to just do that another time. But it really almost never, it really almost never happens that you have another chance to photograph the exact same thing with the exact same passion, with the exact same light and everything. So going through this like dozen of births that were incredible, and not being able to photograph one because I kept thinking, oh, I'm just gonna do it the next time. This one was the one that I'm like, I'm just gonna do it. I know this lady is screaming and she needs water, but let me just take this one picture and that's it. And then I'll go and like give her water or whatever she needs. So I'm really happy it happened. And that I was also able to share this photograph with her afterwards. This man also came to the picture. He's also another healer who heard of Mama Tilda's reputation. And he came and he said to her, I would like to work with you and be your counter healer. So medicine man, medicine women, I would like to work with you. And she enjoyed his energy very much. And I also did. He was, because of him, I was actually able to photograph much more because he became the helper. So then I was able to take photographs. And he also appears over here. So in this image, he is blowing alcohol to the volcano, which is also a tradition that when you go and visit a taita or a volcano, you give an offering. And in this case, the offering is blowing alcohol as a way of kinship. So that was him. And this is them cleansing each other after a ceremony. They cleanse each other at the head. I also wanted to show you this. So this photograph here, this is me. I'm not trying to dress this as them, as indigenous people, but they gave me the hat and they gave me the shawl. So I put it on and it was really cold. And this is just a photograph that someone took of me. And I thought it would be nice for you to see it and just, like photographer in action, quote unquote. Trying to blend in, having a little drink. And I also wanted to share it with you because you're able to see the camera that I'm using. And this is a Rollei 35S. It's a very tiny camera. This is the camera where I was able to create this image. So again, like I'm really just using different cameras, different techniques. They all bring something different to the experience and something. And as I learn more, about photography, I start realizing what I wanted to capture and how I wanted to capture. So I gravitated within these three cameras most of the time. So this is Mama Tilda and I. This is something that she would do often. It's just to braid her hair in the sun. That would be always my time to just take a nap or enjoy the sun. So I just wanted to share that intimate moment with you all. So this is also with the same camera with the Rollei. So these two images here are part of a cleansing. I experienced many cleansings with plants and plant medicine with her and through her. And this is one of those ceremonies. This is around 5 a.m. And there's something that I like about this image is that there was a big fire that we created for the ceremony. And the end of the film has that quality of fire. So it's almost like the photograph is capturing that fire that is happening outside the picture frame, which is why this image is special for me in that way. This is the moment right after. So I put them next to each other. This is where this man Alfonso stayed, and something that she loved to do was to listen. She loved listening to the radio. So this is like one of our last photographs. All right, so now I want to talk about this other body of work. So this body of work is titled "In the Mouth of the Mountain Jaguar, Everybody's a Dancing Hummingbird." And what I did for this work, again, in my efforts to stay with Mama Matilda for as long as I could, I applied to a generous grant from the Museum of Quai Branly, Museum du Quai Branly. And what I did, and again, and this is for any one of you who submits work and is applying to grants, always keep applying. I always get rejected the first and the second time, sometimes a third time, but I say fourth is the charm, not third. So, just keep applying. And if this is something that you are interested in. And what happened with this body of work is I had applied to the Quai Branly a few times before, 2 times before, with different bodies of work. And they were, again, very nice. They responded to my rejection letters and, they were very kind. And for this time, I thought, again, I think there's something to be said about radical honesty and really bringing works that are important to you in your heart, and that you have also maybe like an emotional investment in them. Same thing happened with other stories, and same thing with Mama Matilda. I really wanted to continue working with her. I always thought of, at some point I'll have a book and she'll look at the book and probably wouldn't like any of the photos, because a lot of the time she didn't, but she was always supportive. So that was fine. So with this body of work, because the community at this point had already knew of Karen, the other daughter of Matilde, she had this incredible story about how she birthed me. And I couldn't tell people that was a lie, but I also didn't tell people that was true. So it was always this sort of like in between, yes. And I think she also enjoyed having, she was a very playful person, and she enjoyed having people think twice or 3 times about whatever she had to say. So I never wanted to cancel that or say no to that, so I just really continue along. So as I was saying, a lot of people already in the community, they knew me, they knew who I was, they knew when I come, they knew how long I stayed, they knew what I was doing. That when I proposed this project for Quai Branly, I knew that I was going to be able to make it. So the proposal was, instead of working with one person, I want to work with a village. I want to work with the whole community and work and photograph with the whole community, and have the whole community of people and the members of the community intervene in my photographs and do creative conceptual images together. So it was going to be the project with the community, with a village. So I got the grant, and I was able to spend a year and more in Ecuador. And I did this body of work. So the emphasis on this project is on fact and fiction, and what we deem as factual and what we deem as fictitious. So with this body of work, I was really thinking about the role of the storyteller and how we tell stories, and how our stories are also how others hear our stories or see our stories. And I, just to make my life a little bit easier or less complicated, I decided that I was going to do images in black and white that were going to be portraits, and the color photographs were going to be more documentary photographs and also performances. And then the interventions of Julio Tuaquiza, who is the painter who did this, would all be on landscapes that he is familiar with, and then he can interpret and create stories as he pleases. So that was kind of the my parameters as I was delving into this. And all the black and white photographs are in large format paper negative. So for those of you who know about paper negatives, these are all paper negatives. This probably feels more like a paper negative because it's always hard to get a really good paper negative. So when I got this, I was very extremely pleased that it's sharp and you can see her face, or this one as well. And then in the work, I really try to mix color and black and white, just continuing a fluidity of portraiture and interventions and experiences in the community. So all of these have a story, and they're all, the vision of the painter. And then he told me the stories, and then I'm able to tell you the stories. It was really also very important for me to let go of any sort of idea or notion of how these would end up looking. When I gave him the perfect prints, I went into his house, and he has a lot of cattle. So he's often full of cow poo. I don't know how you say that, cow poo. So when I put these images, he's like, oh, he just like cleans something with his hands, and he's just like, put the prints there. I'm like, oh my God, these prints are never, ever going to be pristine. Never. So I imagined how I was going to Photoshop the cow poo out of the images. That was like my thinking. How am I going to do that? Because I know they're going to be filthy. I know. And they were impeccable. And I was just very, very surprised, and also just a lesson for me to just, let go and just say, it's going to be what it's going to be. And on top of that, he said to me, come back in 6 months and I have your work ready. And I'm like, Julio, I do not have 6 months. So like a good negotiator, he's like, okay, I'll give you 3 months, but you got to pay me twice as much. So I'm like, Julio, this is really hard. I mean, and especially in my mind, I'm like, I don't know. First, I don't know if you're going to deliver. And second, they're never going to be clean. And you want me to pay so much money for something that I'm not even going to be able to show it, but I didn't say any of that. So I just like swallow my words. And I waited 2 months, and I'm like, okay, I'll give you 3 months. That's fine. We'll do it. 3 months. And 2 months, in 2 months, he emailed, he didn't email me, he called me, and he had them ready. So I was really, really happy about that. Something that I think now is how I'm going to mix Piedra Redonda and this body of work. something I didn't think about it before, but now I'm thinking, as I look at this work again with Piedra Redonda, I see how connected they are. And maybe for some of you, it's very obvious, but for me, it was not that obvious. And I think I needed to create a sort of mental disconnection so I could focus in the community more. So this is called the marriage of the Yachak and the Uma. This is a fictitious marriage that Mama Matilde is having at the foot of the Chimborazo. And this is something that she wanted to happen. So what I did is that I made it happen by creating the photograph, calling these people to come. These are all people that she knew. So we set up a day and a time and food for the volcano and all these different things so we can make this happen. But this is a vision that she wanted. She wanted to get married to the Uma, to the supreme intelligence at the foot of the volcano. So we did. So this is also part of the carnival. So you also see that over the years, for example, this image is about 8 years older than this one, at least 8 years older than this one. And there's a little bit of light leak on the top, which at that point I didn't know how to control. I just like, as I was photographing, I was also learning about photography. So there were like all these little things that I start fixing as I learn more. But yeah, these two are about eight years difference. And this one is 8 years earlier. So 8 years, well, 12 years ago, 10 years, no, then 2 years ago, and then 12 years ago again. Something like that at this point. I'm gonna tell you just a quick story on this one. This one is called Seven Devils and Seven Saints. And this work here was a collaborative work with, these are all members of the community. And I just asked them if they can come and they could choose their favorite masks and they could sit with whoever they were attracted to with their masks. And that's what they did. So it happened pretty organically, and things could, I mean, the this cafe was also really open to it. These are all masks that are made locally. So there's a story about how this town was created by 7 devils and 7 saints. So I was also playing with the fact, the fictitious fact of the birth of this town. So something I wanted to say about these are 3 photographs, papers that I have. So at this time, I did a lot of images. I photographed a lot. And I always think about how can we recycle photography? Because sometimes, especially if you use digital cameras, you're taking 500, 1,000, 2,000 images, and you go through so much. And I'm not doing digital, I'm doing film. But even if you're doing film, there's a lot of images that you end up not using. So what I did is that I cut them out and I made collages with them, because I still wanted some of the energy or the imagery of that experience to be part of the work. Whether I show these images or not, I still wanted to do something with them. I didn't want to just leave them on the side and be like the images that I never see again because they were not good enough. You know, I wanted to have them included somehow. So that's that body of work. And finally, I wanted to share with you this work that I did in New Mexico. This is called, I call it Meda. The name came to me. And Meda, I'm really exploring the relationship of the body and the land. And the land as a first body and the body as the first land, and going through a lot of Amerindian myths, tales, stories, also stories from my own traditions, And I'm also living in New Mexico, which is a perfect place to explore. At least for me, the echo of water is so prevalent. I feel in certain places in New Mexico, I felt that I was walking in what could easily be underground ocean. So that's how it felt to me. So it was so deeply connected to memory and ancestrality that it came naturally to do this project. So I work with a lot of women, as I do. I collaborated with a lot of people. For this project, I talked to a lot of folks and told them the idea, and some of them, so my premise was very simple. My premise for them was, how would you walk in the land if you were walking in the land for the first time, but you were conscious about it? How would you touch the land? How will you smell it? How will you see it? How will you sense it? How will your body interact in the land if you were doing it for the first time? And good enough, I guess. I'm not good enough, but good for me that a lot of the people that I said this to, they agreed to do the photographs, and they were intrigued by their own emotion. And so we did it. And for a lot of them, this is a large format. This is also a large format. I asked them to just spend time on the land and do what they feel. And I'm going to be around and I'll have the camera, but I'm not going to interrupt them. So they'll do what they need to do and how they wanted to do it. And I'll take the picture and we'll look at it and we'll talk about it afterwards. When I say afterwards, means 2 weeks later, because these things take time to develop. So it will take a little bit of time before we meet each other again. And, for a few people, they said, oh, I want the image taken again. I feel like I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it better next time. And we did, but it was never as good as the first time. And I think there's an echo with other stories in that way, where you do it for and not that it's always the case, but it was just interesting for me to see how when you do it for the first time without knowing or without being so conscious that there's a photographer that is going to photograph you at any moment, you just did it. You were just present in the land. The second time that we did the photographs, it really felt that they knew that I was there. So it was never as good. So I'm showing you all the images that were the first time that we took them. I also developed some paintings to go along with this project. They are images of bones. These are 40,000-year-old bones from cave paintings. People that I met were, I met them randomly. I met them through friends. I met them locally. I met them because they knew that I was photographing something else. So then they talked to me and then I told them what I'm doing. And then they wanted to be part, or they knew someone they wanted to be part. So it was very, what is the word? It was I'm thinking about something that is sticky. Like the idea was like sticky. Like it was like, people like heard, it was like, oh, I want to be doing that. I want to be doing that. Or they will send me messages. Oh, you're the photographer that you want people to be naked in the landscape? I'm like, no, I don't want you to be naked in the landscape. If you want to be naked, that's fine. But the whole premise, so I had to write just in case, because a lot of people are like, I want to be naked. It's like, it's not exactly about being naked. But yeah, you can be naked if you want to. So for this these photographs I mainly photographed in black and white, but again, there's moments that you have to do it in color. It's just the color is too strong not to miss it. So this is one of those images where the color was so vivid that I just could not make them in black and white. And I also did a few images in Ecuador. I really, for this project, it was mainly in New Mexico, but this one is one of the few images that is done in Ecuador. And this woman laying down, she's a medicine woman. She works with plant medicine, and she wanted to be photographed. She knew about the project and she wanted to be photographed, and it was impossible to say no to. So she's in here. And I think, yeah, I think that's it. Thank you. I cannot hear you, but thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. You can see the clapping hands.
I can see the clapping hands.
Okay, well, I'm sure everybody means them to reach you. Karen, thank you so much. I feel like I'm coming back from an incredible journey with you, and just so trying to return to where I was sitting an hour ago and ask you some questions about it. And of course, we're happy to take questions from the audience as well. I wanna ask you just an art practice related question with the collaborative work that you did with Julio. When you have an exhibition and when you sell the work, do you show the originals, or have you digitized the originals and then translated those into digital editions?
Oh, that's a great question, Jaime. I think when I felt, I don't know, I didn't feel good about creating editions of it, although a lot of people have said, why you don't have editions? I don't. I feel also that my journey with Julio is not over, and I'll go back and like ask him for something else and we'll collaborate again. But for these images, they're all one of a kind. So when they get sold, they're sold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I have high res of them, resolution, so I can print them. But for some reason, I don't feel like I want to do that, especially as we created. I don't know. There's just a sense of, there's something very sacred about the images with his marks, and then my photograph together. That it's just it kind of dissolves if I just sell it as an edition. I don't know.
Understood.
Maybe okay.
I mean, even the way you described him sort of cleaning up his space with dirty hands, and your own fears about how that would create a liability for you as an artist who was commissioning a collaboration. In that, I guess it ended up having its own patina and its own sort of halo about it that won't translate if you bring that work into a digital environment.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you do have the scans, then you're in a position to translate that work into a book project, right? Or to
Yes, yeah. For
release
book,
it for publication in magazines.
yes. For a book project, yes, but not for like selling a print.
Understood. Something else that I was really curious about is you had this intense apprenticeship, and I think that's something that I personally always love about these lectures, is that photographers have a fascinating way of interacting with the world. You never know what a photographer has experienced or what they know, and nobody more so than you. I mean, you were a healer apprentice, and then spent so much time in Ecuador delving into that and living that life and being a helper and being present. Do you work as a healer nowadays? Is that part of what you do?
Thank you, Jaime, for that question. Well, Mamita Matilde, she passed away last year. And since then, I've been a little bit more open to doing healing work, and I do healing work. Um, yes, I guess that's like the short answer. It did take a long time for me to be able to just even say it. But so much training that we did. And I do remember her saying so many times to me, I want you to continue this work. I want you to keep doing this. And I'm like, no, mamita, I like to just like do this between you and me, like do all these things, because we did so many things together and I enjoyed so much. And I think there's a different type of responsibility when you're not just there supporting and just like, yeah, I'll help you. I take, I'm going to take a step back, lay down, and I wake up and like help you do this. Now I have to like be that. So it definitely is a whole different responsibility, but it's okay. I can do it.
I believe you can. I absolutely believe you can. And maybe you're being a little bit too humble, always as a default. I mean, I just remember how you started talking about other stories, historias bravas. And by the way, how that's not other stories does not translate into historias bravas, English to
No.
Spanish. It's a different title. So maybe you can speak about that. But you started by saying that was a project I did for myself. And then it became a platform for you to have a monograph and to be invited to PhotoFest. And by the way, I do second your endorsement of Enfoco. Over the years, they've been just as helpful to me. And their mission is to support photographers of color, in the broadest definition of that. And if people in the audience need a home, Enfoco is a great home. And it's a community, and it's got tradition, and their heart is in the right place. And they've got that beautiful publication, Nueva Luz. So I'm going to write that in the chat in case anybody's interested in following up on that. They continue to have the fellowships, and so it's worth looking into.
Yeah, they're really a great organization.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's an incredible journey, and I think you did a terrific job of laying out, an overview of all of these things. I don't think I could have covered so much ground so succinctly and yet so personally in the short space of an hour. So that was impressive to me. Another aspect of this idea of healing, and I ask this only because I think in your work you have the ability to thread together personal, individual narratives with collective narrative, with ancestral narratives. You're very tuned into memory, not just of individuals, but of place and history. And so I'm going to ask this question, not to put you on the spot, and I don't expect an answer if you don't have an answer, but from the point of view of a healer, looking not at individuals, but looking at nations, have you ever thought of better ways of building bridges between nations? Is that something that you consider? How could we, for instance, in this continent, how should we be building better bridges between North and South?
That's a very big question. I think that I think that it is a type. My answer will be, there's many answers in many ways. I think that collectives that are interested in seed saving, they can get in touch and like talk about seeds across the North and the South. That's like what comes to mind right now to me, I guess, because we're in the spring. So I'm just thinking about seeds so much. And I'm growing all sorts of tropical plants inside the house, knowing that they might not grow, but I still have to grow them because they mean something to me. But I think that the more that, and this is just my personal approach, I guess, the more that we become honest and vulnerable to ourselves, and the more that we are able to look within with deep, deep honesty, bridges open up. You know, other people that are also feeling that want to be connected open up. I think it's just it happens in an energetic level that maybe it's not at first visual or at first even spoken, but I think it happens in the way that the people that we attract or the things that come to our where we are conscious or field. And that's what I think. Personally, right now, I'm exploring a lot. Music making, instrument making. I'm making instruments from ancestral civilizations, Nazca, Mayan, Hamacoake in Ecuador, just all the civilizations that had music as ceremony, as ritual. And I'm learning how to make these instruments from north to south. So that to me, and I'm doing this with a collective of people. So it's really interesting to be able to build that little community and exchange knowledge and talk about it and learn from one another. It's extremely rich. And it really came, it wasn't a call for me. It wasn't something that I was thinking, sitting and thinking, what am I going to do? It just came. And I think the time was ripe. That's also something about seeds, right? Like when the time is ripe, things will come.
What a beautiful answer. Thank you. That's a very poetic way of replying to that question. I have a question here from Tom Ash, our department chair, and it says, Karen, I love the variety of photographic processes you have explored. Are there any that you are still looking forward to working with in the future?
Oh, thank you. I think that's a good question. Maybe wet plates. Maybe that is interesting to explore at some point. I've never done a wet plate, so I'm curious about that process.
Dania del Sol wants to know, did you get to travel to Cuba and create any work there?
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, I did. I stayed with one of my good friends at that time, and I did. And it was a very it was a wonderful trip. It was beautiful to be there, to be in Cuba. This is in 2005, maybe 2006, I think. Maybe even I can't remember. And I did. I really, really enjoyed being in Cuba and meeting a lot of people and doing a lot of portraits. It was wonderful. Thank you. I'm not really proud of any of the portraits. It's not like but I'm happy I did them. Yeah.
Here is a question from Priska Edwards. Let's see. Actually, I have two questions. Okay, no, it is the same question. Just one was private and the other one was to everyone. So did it take a while for Mama Matilde to trust and feel comfortable with your camera? What was it like building the relationship with her as a friend, helper, and photographer?
Yes. Let me go back to this for a moment, because it was really a long time ago to think about a moment when she didn't trust me. Or let me just Give me a moment. The first thing I did with her was to help her build a sweat lodge. So she knew that I could move wood and do whatever she needed to get done. She knew that she could trust me. When I started taking photos of her, which was very quickly after, maybe a few days after, they were not really fine art photographs. They were more like, oh, this wood instead of this wood. So I'm put them in front of you so you can see them. So I'm taking the photo so I know the difference between those two. You know, like that was like the very, very, very beginning, like photography as documentation in that way. But afterwards, when I brought the Mamiya, which is the camera that I use the most with her, I think she also liked that camera. And there was a sense of seriousness in the fact that I had a beautiful camera with me and that I am taking this seriously. And she was a very regal and also a natural performer. So it was also interesting for her to be in front of the camera. But the most intimate moments where I'm photographing, I didn't really photograph in ceremony. I was photographed before or after, but those photographs happened much later. Also, when I felt like, okay, I'm not just photographing, you know, it took a little bit of time to get there for me. But I do remember, just wanted to say this, that there were times that she would say to me, where's your camera? Why are you not photographing? You know, and I think she really saw me as this person that just could do both things at the same time. So when I was not doing one, she would just wonder.
Here's a question from Diego Acosta, an alum of our program, signing in from Quito, Ecuador. Hola, Diego. Nice to see you. He says, hi, Karen, greetings from Quito. Is there any reason why you choose the mountains instead of the coast?
Oh, I don't think I have a clear answer for you. I've always gravitated naturally to the mountains. I lived in Quito when I was a child too. And there was also just something about the Andes that to me was undeniable. So I just had to go. Now, at this point, I'm doing a project in the coast and I feel like, oh, I'm going to the coast. But in my 20s and yeah, and up until now, it has always been the mountains, always been the Andes for me. I just gravitated there.
You know, as photographers, we're always looking where we shouldn't be looking. And I keep looking past you at that bag, that is el morralito that is hanging from your wall. Is there a special reason for it to be there? Is it special?
Oh, no.
Are you running out the door after your talk is done? Are you going hiking, or what's the story there?
Oh no, Jaime. It's a present that Mama Matilde gave to my partner. And it's not a very pretty bag. And she gave it to him kind of like as a joke. But he doesn't understand, he doesn't speak Spanish, so he doesn't understand the humor in it. So he just feels bad. He felt bad about not taking it, and he feels bad about keeping it. He feels bad about hanging it. He feels bad about not hanging it. So it's like all this, like, I don't know what to do. And now that she's not with us, he feels like she might get upset if I take it down. So I'm like, oh my God, that bag. So that's why it's still there.
It's not a bag, it's an albatross.
Yes.
Anyway, Karen, thank you so much. I mean, that was such an inspiring evening with you, and thank you for sharing so candidly about your experience. I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that I feel richer for that. And
thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Once again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.